Welcome to episode 23 of Chats. Today we're talking about the hit TV show Schitts Creek. I'm Corbin.
I'm Sarah.
Yeah, so...
We have to laugh.
We have to laugh.
We have to laugh. Which is good to start an episode with a good giggle.
Exactly. Just because the research... Apparently this hit show has different search results for things like number of episodes. I was going to try and do a little fancy intro where I said, welcome to episode 23 of Chats, where we discuss and celebrate. And I go on about how many episodes there are, how many seasons. And apparently the source I found was wrong because Mom found the right source somehow.
Oh no, I'm just saying you have to check like to more than one source just to make sure. So yeah,
well, we checked two sources and they were both different, so this doesn't make any sense.
It's not a good start.
No. But we do want to talk about this show because it has been a show we've watched since the very beginning.
Yeah.
Every week live, and we've even been rewatching it kind of
on Netflix.
On Netflix. Yeah. Just because we miss it a lot. We really enjoyed this show. It's funny every week. And we thought, you know what? With the quarantine right now, with COVID-19, what better thing to talk about on the podcast than a show you can binge right now? And
we did reference it last week. The fact that it was the series finale last Tuesday. So we weren't able to talk about it ahead of time, but now we can. So we kind of want to talk about what we thought about the season finale, the series finale, and why we love it so much. And I've got some information about the background and some of the stuff that happened. And then we can also discuss the behind the scenes, the kind of the documentary that they did after the series finale, which I thought was really well done. Yeah.
So what do you have on your list there?
Well, for anyone who's not familiar with Schitts Creek, it aired for the first time on January 13th, 2015 on CBC television here in Canada. It ran through until April 7th of 2020. They had 80 episodes. In the U.S., it was aired on Pop TV. And the interesting thing that I saw about Pop TV is that it used to be called TV Digest Channel.
Oh.
And they rebranded right around the time that this came to them. And their mandate was light and funny and positive messaging.
Nice.
Which I thought, like, really, you couldn't ask for a better show to be fit onto a channel. So that was just kind of a takeaway that I had there. Schitts Creek has received 2 ACTRA awards, which are TV awards in Canada, kind of like an Emmy situation in the US.
Yeah, for television.
It's also received 18 Canadian Screen Awards. It was the first Canadian comedy to be... excuse me, I got a frog in my throat for something today. To be nominated by the Critics' Choice... to be nominated for a Critics' Choice Television Award, and it was the first Canadian comedy to win an MT Movie and TV Award for Best Comedic Performance by Dan Levy, who is the brainchild behind Schitts Creek. Dan Levy is the son of Eugene Levy, and if you don't know Eugene Levy, what are some of the performances he's been in?
He's very well known for starring in mockumentary type movies like Best in Show, For Your Consideration, and Way of the Wind, I believe, or A Mighty Wind.
A Mighty Wind.
Which we've all watched because we need that fix of Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy.
And they started in SCTV, which was kind of your comedy workshop out of Toronto in Canada back in like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So they've got that history. Eugene Levy is also the dad in the American Pie franchise.
And Catherine O'Hara is the mother in not only Beetlejuice, but also both Home Alone movies.
Yes. She keeps losing her kids.
I know.
Or disconnected. She's not a good mom. In any of her roles, she's just not a great mom. But anyway, so that's just some of the performances they've been part of.
And speaking on the awards, I remember watching, I think, one of the years where they were up, which was almost every year they were up for some sort of award. And even when they won awards for acting, like Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, they were often competing against many of their other actors, or just the show was competing against itself, really, for awards at these shows because it was that good.
Yeah.
And it still continued to be good up until the finale, which had a lot of people saying, including us, why are they finishing it? But they want to go out on a high note, which doesn't happen very often for television shows.
But to go back to how things started, in the U.S., it was Pop TV's first nomination for Outstanding Comedy Series. That's just one of the nominations that they got. So it helped that channel be groundbreaking in the States as well. If you're not familiar, you're like, well, what's the big deal? The premise is that Dan Levy is David Rose. His father, Eugene Levy, plays his father in the show, who is Johnny Rose. And Catherine O'Hara is Moira Rose, so that's the mom and dad. And then Annie Murphy plays Alexis Rose. So this is a family, parents, son and a daughter. And they are used to a very privileged lifestyle. And suddenly it's ripped from them because their business manager fails to handle their affairs properly, and they have no money. The only thing that the government allows them to keep, as they're literally, it actually is talk about starting with a bang.
Yeah.
The first episode.
I remember watching the first episode.
Like, you are thrown into this story as it's happening. So it's an excellent.
You see these characters at their worst. You never see them at their quote unquote best, what they think is their best. Yes. So it's kind of very interesting to see them try and claw their way back to their
and this shows how much they had. Like, they had the house and the cars and all the trappings of a very materialistic and affluent lifestyle.
And you hear a bunch about it through the kids.
Yes.
And more.
Yes.
And
so when the government says the one thing they can keep is a town that was bought for David by his father in 1991 as a joke. And it's a little hick town, in their words, hick town, called Schitts Creek.
Yeah.
They didn't even think it was actually a real town. The kids didn't believe it was a real town. The dad knew it was a real town, and he buys it for David. This ends up being where they relocate to, simply because they've got
they have.
They've got no other
other
place
than their
to
clothes,
go.
which is a big part of the characters.
And all Moira's wigs.
Yes.
So...
And so this is all practically, a lot of people could say right now, so what? We've seen the story trope of the rich people lose it all.
Fish out of water.
Yeah, fish out of the water.
Yeah.
Except movies and arguably other TV shows, this isn't what they're all about. It happens in the story maybe.
It's how they launch it.
It's how they launch it, and it's how they dive and dissect all the little things, whether it be from past criminal records like Alexis, the daughter. She starts up the show. She has to do volunteer service around this small, crappy town, and she's got the tiaras on while picking garbage and stuff.
Yes,
or
she still acts like she's so above it. I mean, wow, like she's got this volunteer hours thing that she has to take care of. But that's the beauty of it is. From the minute you started, like, they were never nasty. Yeah. And even though they were incredibly uncomfortable about where they were, they were more, it was more, the emphasis was on their discomfort than it was about them insulting the people they were around. There's a couple times where it's kind of like, ooh, you can see how they're getting really
tongue
close.
in cheek, yeah.
Yeah, but they're never mean-spirited.
No.
The biggest part of this show for me, which when I saw it for the first time, and I started thinking, oh, to me, I'm picking up a sense that David's view of sexuality is broad. He's not heterosexual, and not that was important to me personally, but it became part of the story that who he was attracted to, and conversely, his sister, she has relationships on the show, but it became more about this acceptance of how he is pansexual. Pansexual meaning he is open to experiences with who he's attracted to, not a gender. And
in one of the more famous lines, he's into the wine, not the label.
Which is brilliant.
Yes. And that's
so well done.
And that's probably the most that they, other than it being just existing on the show, that's the most they ever poke and prod at it. Because, as they said, just like how the character trope had been done many times before about the rich family, the character trope of a gay person in a small town has been done quite a bit, but it's always negative, not or
reactionary.
Reactionary.
You're gay.
No one. No. And if they do, it's literally a and then continuing with the scene.
Yeah, it's not a factor
No.
in the relationship with that other person. It's always just, and he has brown eyes.
Yeah.
It's like a statement of fact.
And that was such a huge thing for people in the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
It was absolutely huge. You see, we saw them walking in the Toronto Pride parade.
Yeah.
And people had signs. People were cheering for them.
Yeah.
And they had,
emotional. People were emotional that this cast of characters, and I think to a certain degree it was based around David, and then later David and Patrick, his partner, which we'll get more into that in a minute. But it was also the fact that the whole cast, the characters, were just so accepting.
Yeah.
It was a non-issue from the get-go. And I picked up on that pretty early on, and I thought, what an amazing message this is, that the story is not driven by this singular aspect of this person's life. And like you said, everyone accepted it, moved on.
Yeah.
Didn't faze them when he was with someone different or when he was, interested in someone. It was and that's not the focus, to be clear. That's not the focus of the story here. That is but one part of David's character.
Yes. And even the more judgmental characters still did
Nobody
and,
engaged in that part of it.
And that's one other thing that I have to give the show credit for, was I don't think I rarely ever finish TV shows from start to the end. And
especially 6 years worth of
and I may have missed one or two, which we're rewatching it, so I'm going to catch it anyways.
Yeah.
But I have yet to watch a TV show for 6 seasons, or maybe even less, where I haven't disliked a character, where the writers have kind of jumped off the deep end or have changed a character, even a side character, where there's always a character that I turn on, or I just say,
I can't stand watching him in this scene.
stand.
Do you think that's because, though, that there's almost a culture of acceptance that even the people, and I'll use the mayor as the example. The mayor of the town it's named after his family, so his name's Roland Schitt.
Yeah.
So he kind of becomes the guy that he's kind of the awkward, socially, but again, going back to the David thing, he's never uncomfortable with the David situation or Alexis having partners or whatever. Like it's not an issue.
But he's very judgmental.
He's just kind of bombastic at times and awkward. But you never get to the point that you hate him. You give him some
I would
slack.
call him judgmental, though, just of the fact of especially when he's helping around the motel, where he will pick the things out and say, and judge them, be like, well, this door's creaky and stuff like that. But he's never like that to anyone. Yeah, no, it's not directed at people, and even if he usually comes across as more, I see you calling me out type thing, right? It's if you poke at him, he'll poke at you. He'll come back. Yeah. But that's talking about the controversial aspects of the show. So again, both pleasantly surprised that the sexual orientation is not a factor in the storyline. But what was a bit of a factor was the name of the show, the fact that it was called Schitts Creek. Yes, spelt very wisely. SCHITTS. And it's a German name. And when Dan and Eugene Levy went to CBC and said they wanted to call it, because of course it's after the reference of we're up Schitts Creek without a paddle. In other words, we have no hope. We're out of luck. We're done for. You're at the bottom of the barrel. We're done for. So that was the whole point of using that as the name, and Schitts Creek being named after the family that founded the community. So it was a full circle moment. So CBC finally agreed to their suggestion of the name once they actually pulled pages out of a phone book and said there are actually people named Schitts. Yeah. Or shit. It's a name. And you can actually reference the fact that if anyone gives you a hard time, it's not a swear. Nope. It's a name. It's a German name. Yeah. So, and no one they rarely ever use it as a shtick to get away with saying shit. No. Because they say other swear words as well during the show's duration, but it's never. It would almost be too easy because the writers are so good on the show. It'd be too easy to have a shit and shit joke. Yeah. And for them to use that in Canada was one thing, but then to try once they had the partnership with Pop TV
they couldn't get away with airing it in the U.S. because of the censorship and you know, the requirements to air in, the episodes. So they had to put out a disclaimer before every episode.
What did it say?
Just saying that, you know, profanity, because they still zeroed in on the name being too close to the word shit.
Yeah.
So, again, that just shows you the difference in culture. But I mean, now the series is broadcast around the world.
Yeah.
It's in Australia,
It's a
India,
huge
UK. Yeah, like they have had some issues in, and I can't remember. I did see which there were a couple of Asian countries that took issue with the relationship of David and Patrick.
Which isn't towards the show, it's just towards anything that has to do with same-sex couples or stuff like that.
Well, they actually edited the show when they broadcast it.
Yeah.
And Dan Levy came out really hard and pushed back and said, first of all, not cool. Like, if you buy the product and air it, you're buying the entirety. You can't go in now and start cutting apart what is seen and what is said. And apparently there was an apology issued, and they said that there would be no further modifications, I'm using finger quotes, to the episodes, because they did get feedback. And that's the whole point of the show is acceptance. And even though there could be awkwardness, there's still that feeling of tolerance and open to other things and new experiences. So I thought that was pretty cool. And when it wasn't accepted, I mean, even though you and I loved it from the first episode, it wasn't universally embraced. When it first came out, it had like a 60% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and critics like the guy from the New York Times just slayed it and said it was lazy writing, which I don't know how you could say that, but they did. And because it started off with Eugene and Dan writing it together.
Yeah. And then it kind of grew.
And then it was Dan on his own. He became the showrunner.
Well,
but seasons 2, 4, and 5 each ranked at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is really hard to achieve.
Well deserving, though.
Yeah.
But it's just, as I said, every episode, you know, it's a banger. It's always quality.
If you don't laugh, you're in a really bad mood.
Well, even if you don't laugh, you still come out of it enjoying it, because there's either a message behind the episode or it just lifts your mood. You know, either way, you're going to enjoy the half an hour you get out of it. And
it's amazing because each of the characters could almost be a caricature. Like, they walk that fine line. Like with Moira, she's what one could argue a retired actress, although it doesn't seem like she really wants to be out of acting. I think she was okay as long as they had money that she wasn't acting, but
she likes the fame. She likes that rush.
Yes. She likes the recognition of it. So from that standpoint, you're like, okay, so she's kind of in the sunset of her career, which is ironic because she's known for her role on a soap opera called Sunset Bay. But yeah, so it's the performances are so sharp, and they're so careful not to become themselves the joke. Moira has this affected speech, and she has the wigs. Yeah. She has the clothes. We'll get to the clothes in just a second. But just this whole persona about her, she's over the top.
Always.
And yet again, everyone's accepting that she walks in with literally, crazy wigs on and platform stiletto shoes, and like there's nothing that kind of strikes anybody as odd. But to have that kind of ability to take a character and make them impactful and make people care about them, and yet still have that range with a character. Same with Johnny Rose. He spends his whole time trying to redeem himself after losing all this money, and you can tell like he bears the burden of that because
he feels responsible.
Yeah, it was his business manager, and he built the empire, but then he feels he lost the empire. So, and then Alexis, she's this girl. The best part about Alexis, which every time, especially in the early episodes, you really have to watch out for this. She will come out with random anecdotes when they say about how horrible it is, and she'll come back with, oh, it's not as horrible as, and then she'll proceed to tell a story about being
kidnapped.
I was going to say, shoved in the trunk of the Shaw's, Rolls Royce, and for 60 hours or something ridiculous like that,
or going through a simple police stop checkpoint on a highway, and
she knows how to handle it. She's done it.
She never tell them your real name. Like don't give them your IDs and all that.
She always picks the name of Angelica whenever she has to come up with a pseudonym. It's always Angelica.
And that's stuff that you can get on a second viewing, because when it's on a week-to-week basis, you tend to forget this stuff. But if you watch it all during this quarantine, you will pick up on the wittiness and the sharpness of the writing, which Dan Levy deserves all the credit for.
Yeah.
So he's done a fantastic job with this. This was his idea. He took it to his dad to get some kind of
mentoring
and to get some wind behind the sails.
Yeah.
And then that turned into things getting the ball rolling, which led to making a pilot where they kind of said, "Hey, Catherine O'Hara, do you want to come and be in this pilot and then never see us again?"
Yeah, we won't commit you. You don't have to sign a contract. We just need you in the pilot.
And then they got signed for a season, and then they're like, "Catherine, do you want to come back?" So it's just all these moments of almost like a very interesting, very underdog story almost, where it's just this little idea.
All serendipitous. It was meant to work out the way it did, because I found out when I was looking at some information for this, Annie Murphy, who plays Alexis, was not the first choice.
Oh, really?
Yes, they had actually in the pilot, the 15-minute pilot, it was actually supposed to be the actor who plays Roland. His daughter is Abby Elliott. His name's Tim Elliott.
Oh.
His daughter is Abby Elliott, and if that name sounds familiar, it's because she used to be on Saturday Night Live about 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And they wanted her, and they liked her look because she was very blonde. And in Eugene's mind, Alexis was this very blonde, kind of based on like a Paris Hilton kind of, socialite / heiress type thing. But so when they realized they're going to get picked up, that's when they started hunting down Catherine O'Hara. And they said, "Oh my God, we need to get us an Alexis." And Annie Murphy came in. And I honestly, I don't know, I've never seen the episode with Abby Elliott in it. But I can't imagine anyone else but Annie Murphy in that role.
For all the characters, there's other shows where you can say, "Oh, I can pick this person out and say, this could be played by this person better.
This guy, yeah."
No one could have played these characters better. It's hard for Eugene and Dan because they created them and wrote them, but everyone else just embodies their characters so perfectly.
Yeah.
There's really no issues with the casting.
So without going into too much more, because if people are going to watch it, then they're going to watch it. I want to ask you, what did you think? And we won't give away anything about the season finale because it's still really series
fresh.
Finale. It's still really new, and we're not into spoilers.
It's only a week ago.
I know.
That it came out.
So if you're going to try and binge it, you won't be able to see that. You won't be able to see it before you hear this anyway. But what did you think? What was your satisfaction level, or what was your feeling at the end of the series finale?
I think we have a very similar thought process on this because we watched it. I mean, we kind of talked about it, but the episodes are always half an hour, and we felt that the last episode should have been an hour,
which always seemed short. Like they would go. The writing was so fluid, and there's so much going on, but it never felt rushed.
No.
But with this last one, I think it could have been an hour.
Mm-hmm. But so I feel it could have been longer just because they were wrapping a lot up in the show. And there were a lot of things where throughout the season they were setting up, but in the last half an hour episode, you don't really get to see those things blossom. So it's kind of like this is almost like a season finale where they're ending the story, but there's more to see next season, which obviously is not the case. It's the end of the show now. But
they do talk that they're open to
coming back for a reunion, but not for a while.
Or a movie or a Christmas special or something, because then that was the joy Dan Levy said of ending things the way they did, was that no one soured. No. Nobody had enough. Nobody was played out. So the idea of them being able to come back and say, "Hey, you know what? Let's a year or 2 years from now, let's do a Schitt's Creek Christmas or something like that. Or maybe something happens. I've already got it written in my head, but maybe there's something that happens and they have to come back and save the town or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's finally a buyer, someone who's interested in buying the town from the Roses. What happens, right? So
but all in all, the last for the little gripes I have about it being I feel I wanting more. That's how the show should leave you, is wanting a little bit more. Like, not a lot more, like not a season worth, but like a half an hour worth more. But other than that, it was fantastic. They definitely stuck the landing, and that's hard to say once again for a TV show to have a good ending that is worthy of the rest of the series.
Yes.
That
That doesn't let it down.
No, I feel they did a fantastic job.
What? I do not.
What?
I don't think for everything that you said, that's what makes me frustrated, is the fact that Dan Levy announced at the end of season 5 that they were coming back for season 6, but it would be the last year.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of time, and he already knew, he said he knew it was never going to be a 10 season project. No. It was always going to be, he was looking at 4 years, and then 4 or 5 years, and then when he got the 2-year deal in season 4, suddenly it's 6 years. So they had lots of time to... He
wrote it ahead of time as well, he said, in the hour-long special afterwards. He said everyone was asking him about the pressure of writing the last episode. He said, I don't need to worry about it because I've already written it.
And it was he already had in his mind, this is where it goes to. So there was no... How do we change it? I'm with you in that I think it definitely needed an hour. Yeah. And again, without saying too much about the episode, there were things that they built up, right? They were building up. And I mean, we can talk about say the wedding because everyone knows that there's going to be a wedding. So the wedding is built up very much.
Yes, but the thing is that those things that you're saying they built up, they deserve to be built up because not only are the characters going to experience it, but we as an audience know these, like, we know what a wedding's like. We know how big of a deal it is. So when it's, squeezed into a segment of a half an hour show, you kind of realize that's not how big it should be, especially for these characters. They would try and make it a big deal almost, right?
I guess for me, when I look at it and I feel like there were certain things that they gave a lot of time to and other things that they really didn't give any time to. And to honor, because that was the conversation, is we want to honor the fans, we want to make sure we honor the characters. A good example of how to do that would be to watch the series finale of Seinfeld, where they had such a body of work to pull from, and they wanted to give everybody some kind of satisfaction. Like they could wrap up storylines. They also brought out characters that you loved and wanted to see again. I was kind of hoping that certain things would kind of jump out. And again, without saying too much, there were things that wrapped up earlier in this season for Schitt's Creek that I thought, but it could swing back in the series finale, but it never did. And I agree. I understand that they can only do so much with a half an hour, but they literally had concert-sized venues where people were screaming like they were rock stars. You could have gotten away with an hour and probably still had people say, you know what? That was a meal as opposed to an appetizer. Yeah. That's how it feels to me. Now, and saying that, it's not the worst series finale I've ever seen. I just was kind of disappointed because I felt... I'm glad they had the little behind-the-scenes 1 hour special.
If we didn't have that, then I probably would feel a little more sour on it. Yeah. But I'd say it's a solid 7 out of 10 for me.
The having that additional content, it kind of gave you more of an investment in things wrapping up because you've had more of a sense of closure as opposed to, here's just a regular episode. Yeah. And
like every other week.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So, again, there are worse ones, but I was hoping for a little more, as we all were, I think, to a certain degree.
Yeah, I agree. But as a whole, it's definitely not one of those season finales where it deters you from telling other people to watch it.
Oh, no,
cough, Game of Thrones.
Well, I was going to say,
Two very different shows. But
we don't want to get Corbin started on seasons 6, 7, and 8 of Game
Season
of Thrones.
6 is good.
Sorry, 7 and 8 of
that
Game
has
of Thrones.
the Battle of the Bastards, which
Okay,
is worth it.
We can't even.
Yeah.
Although if you've never watched Game of Thrones, now's your time. You will get through the whole thing.
We were talking about that the other night. This is the perfect time to binge whatever long show that your friends are pressuring you into.
Yes.
Just go ahead and watch it.
Yeah.
But no, so you can find Schitt's Creek on the CBC Go app, which is a streaming app for the Canadian Broadcasting Network.
It's also on Apple TV.
Anywhere you can buy Google Play.
Yes.
Anywhere you can buy or rent shows / movies, or if you have Netflix, the big one, get Netflix and you will have all the seasons. And I believe that they're going to release season 6 fairly soon.
Yeah, I was going to say they don't have season 6,
but it gets our seal of approval, so that means it's fantastic. It's the best.
Oh my gosh.
And let us know if you guys watched Schitt's Creek, if you watched it from the beginning, if you hopped on halfway through.
What are your thoughts of the season, the series finale? I keep saying season.
Series
it's a
finale.
Series finale.
And what did you guys think of the hour-long special after that? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think that about wraps up our Schitt's Creek episode.
Yeah, you can check us out. You can go through our Gmail to send us that information. So that's chatspodcast@gmail.com. You can go to the platforms where you downstream, which are...
You download or stream, not downstream.
Downstream. I'm economizing my words now.
Yeah, you can go to our YouTube channel at Chats Podcast, where you can go and watch, subscribe, and share all of our episodes from episode 0 to episode 23. And you can check us out on the other streaming platforms through Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And make sure to follow us there. And
YouTube.
I already said YouTube.
Did you say YouTube?
What you're in another dimension right now.
I'm done. Yeah.
You can follow us at all of those places. Be sure to share and let your friends and family know, especially during this quarantine. If you guys want us to talk about any topics, let us know at Facebook. You can let us know on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
Or at chatspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode. It's been me, Corbin.
And Sarah.
And thank you guys for listening, and stay tuned for our latest chats.